Okay, so go there and then download this. If you look at my homework, actually, I have given you instructions how to go about doing this, but you basically download it for Windows. So I downloaded it. I have hit installed. So this is how it looks. So click on that. Okay, the first thing you want to do is you want to install Python. Now, you could actually use this to program in C and so on, but not MATLAB, clearly, because it's proprietary. So what you want to do is go to extensions and type in Python. And then you see this. Go over here. I have it. Okay, I've already installed it. Let me uninstall it. Okay. So Python, it will ask you to install. So just install. Okay, it's installed. So once it's installed, okay, so there are two ways of running Python. One is like the way you would run it in MATLAB. There's a command window, and the command window, whatever you type, you can make it do things like return a matrix, add two matrices, take the inverse, and so on. So what you see here is where the editor will sit. Okay. Before using the editor, I'll show you how to use it like a command window, just like you use a calculator. So what you do is once you've installed it, go say Python, and then it opens this prompt. And now you can start using it just like you use a calculator. Let's say A equals 1, B equals 2, and then C is A plus B. Now, if you wrote this in MATLAB, it'll actually print what C is. Python will not print what C is. So what you need to do is you say print C, and then it prints the answer, right? So this is how you can check lines of code very quickly. But the real power is actually obvious to write a script. So file, new text file. Okay, let me see. Maybe it will work if I. Okay, it gives you a lot of options. See if I can. Okay, there it is. Okay, so I'm just going to save it on the desktop. And then what you want to do is once you install Python, you want to just test it. Like the way you test it is if you want to write a hello world. So once you write a print hello, how do you run this? Well, on here, over here, you see like a run button. Just run that. And then you see it's printed hello. Okay. So if it prints hello, that means it's installed. If it's not, if you were not successful installing it, then it will not print. It'll give you an error. You could also actually in the terminal prompt check the Python. If you say Python, obviously I did that, and it actually go into the Python prompt, right? There's another way to check. If you want to exit this, say quit. I think you can say, hey, Python version. Yeah, so this is using version 3.10.11. Okay, so now that we have it going, we have okay. So now that we have going, let's just write some code. Okay. Okay, so let's just start with some basics. We said print hello. So in MATLAB, the default way, the default variable is a matrix, right? When you write A equals 1, it's 1 cross 1 matrix. In this case, it's not really a matrix. It's basically a list. So a list is something which is heterogeneous. It could have numbers. It could have a string, and so on. Okay, I just wrote some random list things in the list. Now, if you want to print list, if you print list and then you say run, you say it's printed one hello test. But let's say if you want to print the first element of list, so then you say print, just do it over here, print list. Right, so run. Okay, now what you see is, let me comment this out. So comments in Python is hash. Okay, save and then run. So now what you see is that it actually printed hello, but hello is not the first element, it's the second element. So this is the main difference with MATLAB. MATLAB starts indexing from 1. Python starts indexing from 0, just like C. So if you want to print the first element, you just print, say, list 0, and then run, and then you see it printed 1, which is the first element in the list. Okay, so that's one of the very, very important differences between Python and MATLAB. Let's do the usual thing. Let's go through a quick review of different kinds of ways to write conditionals. So let's say this program is going to figure out what value C is taking. So if C is greater than 0 and C is less than 5. So another difference is that you write AND versus the symbol AND, the logical AND in Python. So if C is greater than 0, less than 5, you say print C is between 0 and 5. Note how I wrote the if condition. There is if, and there's a colon, and then there's this indentation. If you don't have this indentation, then it'll actually give you an error. So if you, let me complete this and then I can show you. Else print C is greater than 5. Okay, clearly here I wrote C equals 10, and so it'll fit C is greater than 5. And so if I run this, it should print C is greater than 5. So let's run this and it printed C greater than 5. Now I said about this way of writing the if else, if you don't have this indentation and then you run this, it gives an indentation error. Okay, so it's very picky about that. MATLAB is not picky about it. C is not picky about it, but Python is picky about it. So you also see that it actually told you that there's a problem here. In fact, if you place a cursor there, it actually tells you what the problem is, and you need to fix it. Okay. Okay, so if else, let's get lazy and let's make ChatGPT generate the one for while. Okay, so let's go to. Okay, so I think I don't know if you've used ChatGPT, but you will have to log in, create a login account. You can use your Gmail. I use my UIC email. You can use, well, in this case, I'm using the free version. By default, this is what is enabled. What happens is the way ChatGPT works, it's like a conversation with ChatGPT. Every time you interact with it, it'll keep a record of the conversation so you can reuse it. So here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask it, convert, change this script to using while loop. So if you say enter, then it goes and it takes it as a query. But if you do shift enter, then you can actually keep writing. So I'm going to copy paste that code. Looks like I did not copy it. Let's go here. Okay, I pasted it and then told it to convert that using a while loop. Okay, so that's not really serves the purpose. Probably I should have, if it was a for loop, I should have converted to a while loop. But to give you an idea, it'll actually give you an answer. The question, if the answer is something to your satisfaction or it's up to you. But you could take that, put it in, but also you could, once you get an answer, you could modify it. So this is actually not a good example of a use of ChatGPT. If I had a conditional with for loop, I would have asked it to do a while. Here in this case, not needed. But here you could take this, copy paste it, and it'll do the same thing which you would expect it to do with that condition. So it's copy this, go here, and then paste it. And then let's run it. So it printed the same output, C is greater than 5 two times, once using my if else, once using the while. Okay, the last thing we'll do before we stop is functions. So functions are a very integral part of anything you do. The good thing about functions is that you can reuse them. You don't have to keep writing the same thing again and again. So for example, if you, in a very primitive sense, if you did not have access to multiplication, you worked out multiplication as a function, you just use it to multiply several numbers instead of trying to rewrite that logic again and again. So here is how you write a function, def my function. Okay, the input arguments will go inside. Here, there's no input argument. I'm just going to make it print hello from function. Okay, so again, note how I wrote this. I said def, that's to define the function. There's the colon, which indicates that which is a way in which you write functions similar to the if else. And then you put an indent and say print hello from function. Now I've not called this function. To call this function, I go one, and I remove the indentation because it's going to be back into the main loop, and I just call my function. Okay, so open, close, and then run this. So it printed hello from function. Okay, now this function by itself doesn't do anything meaningful, right? Just prints hello function, but you want to do calculations. So for example, let's say that I would write my own addition function. So my add, in this case, I want to have two input arguments, A and B. Okay, and then I want to say sum equals A plus B, and I want this to return sum. Okay, so here's an interesting example. This function has two inputs. It also has to return an output, which is the sum. So I just say return. In MATLAB, you'll have to put what is returned. In this case, you don't have to just say return sum. So now to call this my add, you say, let's say 1 and 2. And when you run this, it will actually not, well, if you run this, it will not actually print the output because there's no print function. So you not to print, you just say print my add 2, and then run this. So it printed 3, which means that it did the sum. You could also do it something like this: sum equals my, then print sum. Which serves the same function. And of course, there might be an add function, right? You could try. Okay, this is what I would do in MATLAB. The first thing, if there's a function, why write your own function? In this case, there's no function called add. And in fact, there's a function called add in a module called. Let me just do this and I'll let you go. There are modules in Python. One of them is called NumPy. Okay, you have to import it, and in this case, if you then do print np.add1, 2. I'm guessing I've never done this before. I'm guessing that there's a addition in NumPy. Let's try this. So there is a function called addition in NumPy. So this is calling a module called NumPy, and then doing addition. So if you hover, it tells you more about NumPy. In Python, there is a library called NumPy. So in MATLAB, you don't have to worry. Everything is a matrix, but here you need to use a library in order to do this. So the library is called NumPy. And you'll always, most times you'll see this way of importing the library, import NumPy as NP. So now NP is basically an object, and you can use functions within NumPy by doing NP dot whatever, add, subtract, multiplication, and so on. There is, of course, a very good resource on the web. If you just search NumPy functions, you should find a lot of the functions available in NumPy. So there's like a library: sine, cosine, tangent, arcsine, so on and so forth. Okay, and using functions is as simple as going to that function, looking at how it is called. So numpy.sine, and then there are multiple arguments to it. The minimum one is the input X, and then there are some optional ones. So you can read through this and see what it accepts as inputs. The good thing about this documentation, as you can see, is it tells you how to actually use this. So import numpy as NP. And then if you want to find the sine of pi divided by 2, which is 90 degrees, it's just 1. So it'll do that. So you can test this out. Again, I told you that, if you want to test simple things out, you don't really need to write a script. You can just do here Python. And then you can just do import by as NP, and then np.sine of, now if you say pi divided by 2, it doesn't really recognize what pi is, because pi by itself is not a part of Python. Okay, sounds weird, but that's how it is. So you need to access pi through a library. So in this case, what we'll do is we can say np.pi divided by 2, because pi is available in NumPy, and then it says 1. Okay, so this interface on down the terminal, it's always good to debug. If you want to test a chunk of code, you want to use it like a calculator, like you would use a calculator, you could use it. And then if you want to quit this, you just to quit. Okay. Okay, now we'll just work with this. I'm going to show you how to call matrices. So one way of calling matrices is saying np.array. I'm going to define a 2 cross 2 matrix. So the syntax is a bit weird. It's too much, unlike MATLAB, unfortunately. So you need to open close bracket, but then you will define the first row like this, 2 comma 4. And then the second row is 5 comma minus 6. So you see that there's like lots of open close brackets, but luckily the way Microsoft Visual Studio is set up, it actually completes a lot of the code for you. Okay, so how do you view it? Well, you just do print A. It's asked me to save. Let's call this matrix.py. And then we'll run this. Okay, so you saw here it shows the output. It's 2, 4, 5 minus 6. Now, there is also actually, this is how you define it in MATLAB, right? 5 comma minus 6. I don't know if this will work. We can try to see if it works or not. So actually, I think it's complaining. Okay, so something like this is taken straight from MATLAB, does not work. Okay, so that means there's an error. And this is just, I just put this as documentation. This is what we are trying to define. So just set it here. So if you understand MATLAB, this is what we've tried to define like so. Okay. Okay, so that's A. We printed A. Let's define another vector in this case, but again, it's a matrix. Array 1, okay, open bracket, close bracket, 1, 2. So this just has 2 elements, 1 and 2. Okay, and now we can do some operations, but before that, let's just print what you would be done. So 2, 4, 5 minus 6. Now let's see how to do operations with matrices. So one thing we want to do many times is multiply A with B. So it's going to be row times each row multiplied by the column. And you do that for each row. So let's define B as A. So normally in MATLAB, you'll do A times B. Here you'll have to do it this way, A dot B. And then print B. Okay. Okay, is this right? So it should be 2 times 1, 4 times 2, 8 plus 2. So it's 10, that's right. And then 5 times 1, minus 6 times 2. So minus 12 plus 5, which is minus 7. So it did its job. Okay, there's always, you could always check it using a calculator. Okay, now there are other things which you might be interested in. Print. I'll show you how to print the transpose. So normally you'll just do A transpose in MATLAB, but here you'll have to define it using a function within NumPy. It's called transpose. Okay, so what you expect will be 2, 5, 4 minus 6, right? So let's see if that's what it prints. Okay, so 2, 5, 4 minus 6 as expected. Okay, inverse is a very common operation. How do you compute the inverse? Again, you access a class, a function within NumPy. It's actually a little bit more, you would expect to be inverse A. Turns out that maybe this exists. Let's see if it exists. So no attribute called inverse. Okay. So it turns out that this is to be done as linalg. So there is a sort of a function called linalg within which there's inverse. So there's like function within a function. Well, how did I get this? Well, one is if I want to find this, when I was learning this first time, I would just go to Google, search how to do inverse in NumPy. It'll actually give you a hit. That was pre-GPT, right? You don't have to do this anymore. You can just go to ChatGPT and say, how do you find the inverse in NumPy? It'll give you the syntax. Okay, so print inverse. Okay, so it printed something like this. How do I check this? Well, one way to check if this answer is right is I need to take multiply A inverse with A. And if the A inverse is actually inverse, then it will give me the identity. So let's do that. So it turns out that if you want to do A times A inverse, you need to call I mean, you just do it like this in MATLAB, but here you'll have to call a function class. That function is called matrix multiplication. The good thing is Microsoft Visual Studio is actually giving you a hint on how to use this. So you go A inverse A or A inverse, either way you like. And then let's just run this. If everything is right, then it should print identity. Right, so you have 1, 0, 0, 1, which means that the multiplication did indeed yield the identity. Okay, last thing, if you want to define identity, there is another function called identity, and you say how big you want it. Let's say if you want it to be a 2 cross 2 matrix, you put 2. If you want 3 cross 3, 3, and so on. So if you let's say 4 cross 4, print, and run this. So you have a identity.